Hello there, and thank you very much for clicking on to watch this video. If you don't know me, my name is Bond, Dr. James Bond. I'm a health and fitness expert, and I work with people who want to improve their quality of life, particularly those who want to lose weight. What makes my service different is that I'm the only personal fitness trainer in the north of England who's a qualified medical doctor, and therefore I can take on cases that other fitness instructors cannot or will not dare, often with great results. Now, in the last couple of days, there have been a couple of newspaper articles that have announced a new government proposal. And this government proposal is to restrict benefit payments to obese people unless they lose weight. Now, I can understand why they might want to do this because they will say that obese people can cost the taxpayer quite a lot of money. I just think that this proposal is ill thought out and will cause more problems than it will solve, and will cost the taxpayer more in the long run. I'll go into some more details. The reason I know this is because they're going to pick some high-flying doctors to advise on this, and I can tell you from experience, a lot of these high-flying doctors live in cloud cuckoo land or in their ivory towers. Either way, it won't address the needs of the public. So first of all, I'd like to discuss with you the plight of the obese person. Now imagine this scenario. Imagine you're at an airport and you've got two really heavy suitcases. Let's say they were 80 kilograms each. Imagine there's no porter to help you, or there's no trolleys. You'd struggle. Every few feet you'd stop to get a rest. Well, that's what these people live with every day of the week. You and I would take walking to the post box at the bottom of our road for granted. These people can't do that. For them, it would literally be too much. I can walk upstairs to my bedroom very easily. For these people, that will be a nightmare. That's what they have to live with every day of the week. Can you imagine how much your life would be compromised if you had to carry two 80-kilogram suitcases wherever you went? It'll be somewhat difficult. Okay. Now, all too often, people say to me, "Well, how did they end up in such a situation?" Well, believe it or not, obesity is a disease that can occur to anybody. It doesn't discriminate. And the biggest number one cause of obesity, believe it or not, is poverty. Okay? Obesity is going to kill more people than the Great Wars and starvation combined. Okay? But the biggest cause of it is poverty, and there's several reasons for that. Food that is low in nutrition and high in fat is basically mass produced and cheap. Food that is high in nutritional value and low in fat is basically hand produced and expensive. Sadly, those of lower income backgrounds cannot afford it. Now, one of the first bits of advice I give to people is to have 5 to 7 small meals a day. The reason being, if you're eating regularly, the body thinks, nutrition isn't coming regularly, there's no need to store anything as fat. The problem here is a lot of these people can only afford to have 1 meal a day. If that happens, the body's thinking, well, nutrition isn't coming regularly, so store everything as fat, well, everything it can as fat. Now, it's compounded if that 1 meal you have a day is a high fat meal. You're going to put on a lot of weight quite quickly. Another reason is people who are cash poor tend to be time poor. They don't have time to make fresh food. Okay. And lastly, with the greatest respect in the world, people of lower income backgrounds may not be the most educated in the world. So that's why obesity is a disease of poverty. And I dare say that these high-flying doctors who the powers that be asked to investigate will not be aware of this, okay? Because very often they live in their ivory towers. Okay. You might say that these people need to go to a gym. Well, I hate to say this to you, but gyms can be a death trap for these people. Quite legitimately, these people need a blue disabled car parking badge and a a disabled car parking space. Okay. Now imagine this scenario. Very often these gyms don't have sufficient disabled access. Okay. Sometimes what happens is that these gyms can have turnstile access. People, if they're too overweight, they can't get through them. Very often, I've worked in some gyms in the past which are over 2 or 3 floors. Well, what happens is that person can't get up or down the gym, can't get up or down the stairs. What happens if if the lift can't accommodate their weight? What happens if they have an accident and you need to get medical attention to them? They can't be carried. Okay, it's a nightmare. The lady, where can these people get changed without embarrassment? Now that's a big issue. Ladies like classes, so what's going to happen? Is that lady going to go to an aerobics class and stand up front and be embarrassed, or stand at the back and miss out? What happens if there's a step class involving steps? Basically, they might not be able to take their weight. Okay, serious issue. Um, on top of that, what about the gym equipment? Very often, what happens if that person is too overweight for the gym equipment? Okay, what happens in some gyms I've worked at in the past, I've seen heavily overweight people get stuck in the gym equipment, and it can be a nightmare to get them out, I can assure you. Most importantly, a gym program for such a person has to be devised by what's known as a level 4 trained personal trainer who's done specialist training in morbid obesity and diabetes. Such trainers are very few and far between. In fact, when I worked at one gym, there was one program devised for such a person by a level 2 gym instructor who'd only done 2 weekends of training. It was a good thing I was asked to review that program, because it would have killed them. Okay, so there is that. Okay, very often these people have mental health issues, usually stress, anxiety, depression. But all too often they also have very, very poor self-esteem. In some cases can be negligible. Very often they have issues such as physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, or sexual abuse, or domestic violence. And basically that can play havoc with their self-esteem, and very often they comfort eat and go into a vicious circle of comfort eating. They feel worse about themselves, they have more comfort eating, and they go in a downward spiral, and it's a bugger to deal with, I can tell you that. Okay, very often what happens then is, they can go and see the council run exercise and prescription scheme only lasts 12 weeks. What then happens after that? Well, the funding stops, the support goes, the accountability goes, so basically they can drift. Ultimately, they might end up going for weight loss surgery. Now, here's the problem. If your weight isn't high enough, if you're not heavy enough, you don't qualify for the surgery. So what you're going to do, let your health deteriorate to such an extent that you need the surgery? Well, nobody wants to do that. No one knowingly anyway. What then goes and happens if you're too overweight, you're an anesthetic risk, and performing anesthesia on a heavily obese person, I can tell you from experience, is a nightmare. It's very, very difficult to do. Something that no anaesthetist wants to do. Then you've got the issue of basically the cost. Okay, very often to rehabilitate such a person will cost £5,000 if done non-surgically, whereas to do a gastric bypass operation costs a taxpayer £9,000. Okay, it never ceases to amaze me that we're quite happy to spend £9,000, but for about half that they can be properly rehabilitated. In the past, I've had some of my clients cash in investments or borrow money from their families or pick up bank loans to rehabilitate themselves. Now, what should happen with these people is they need to be allocated a general practitioner to look after their general health. They need a mental health specialist to look at issues of the mind. They need a properly trained dietitian or nutritionist to look after their complex nutritional needs, because very often they've got concomitant medical problems such as diabetes, heart disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. They basically need a dietitian to intervene, and obviously they need a level 4 or highly qualified personal trainer to intervene as well. And last but by no means least, if they want to really address the problem, then they have to address the issue of poverty, which, as I discussed before, is the #1 cause of obesity. My guess is that these proposals will be advised by some doctors who live in cloud cuckoo land or in their ivory towers, or a combination of both. And I sincerely hope that the powers that be take what I've suggested on board and really look at it. But just before you go away, if you click below, you'll see a free guide that I give away to the general public. It's called 100 or so ways to lose weight without going to the gym. So click on below and you can get it completely free of charge. The reason I give it away free of charge is because, as I said, obesity is a disease of poverty. My name's Bond, Dr. James Bond, leaving you shaken but not stirred. Bye bye.